Hi, I'm the Prodigal Fish, and today we're going to talk about the Herero Genocide. Before I begin, I got to give a disclaimer that this story is pretty disturbing, so if you have the emotional resiliency of a wet paper napkin, you should probably skip this one. If you're not, I'm assuming you're an adult, so let's get started. What is a genocide? A genocide is defined as an action targeting a group based on religion, race, or ethnicity. This story is focused on the atrocities committed in Africa back in 1904 against the Herero and Namaqua people by the German Empire. We have to go back to 1883 when a guy named Franz Adolf Luderitz, who is terrible in pretty much everything he does, has one tobacco farm that fails in the United States. After that, he goes to Mexico and he loses that one in the Civil War there too. So he decides to go back home and work for his dad for a bit, but they have a falling out. So he tries to set up a factory, British colonial South Africa, and like all his other ventures, this one fails too. It's 1883 and he has nothing left to lose. So he teams up with a merchant named Heinrich Vogel and they purchase land from Captain Joseph Hendricks II for 100 British pounds and 200 rifles. They start advertising for fellow Germans who don't want to go to the United States but don't want to be under German influence to come move down to their colony. His recruiting drive is so successful that he has to use 500 British pounds and 60 more rifles to purchase 80 more square miles. Once that's consolidated, he calls it Luderitz after himself, which I can't really blame him because I'd probably do the same thing. Prodigal Fishville. I like it. He continues to buy land from the local warlords and chiefs till eventually he has 222,000 square miles of coastland in modern-day Namibia and half of South Africa. A lot of this is bought on credit, and his collectors start calling in. So he sends team after team after team of geologists to try to find any minerals. And unfortunately, they can't, so he ends up selling the territory to the German government for 500,000 marks. It's 1884, and the German colonists start moving in. And every time new people arrive, locals are enslaved, and their land is just given to the colonists. The Herero were cattle herders, and mostly peaceful until someone attacked their livestock. Then they would go to war. Another issue that arose is the German soldiers and colonists would constantly sexually assault the women, and most of the crimes went unpunished because the governors were unwilling to have an open revolt against them. So a man by the name of Herero, he sees that his people are losing all their wealth and their security, and now rival factions are attacking. So he unites the Hereros, and they go sign a protection agreement with Governor Heinrich Göring, who is also the father of World War I ace and future World War II Nazi Luftwaffe commander Hermann Göring. The Germans prove unreliable, and in 1888, they refuse to support them against the Whitboy people, and the treaty's canceled. A bunch of local brush wars kick up, and in 1884, the German government sends in the Schutztrupps, which is the Imperial Colonial Army, to pacify the region. From here, everything just gets worse. Now, the locals are constantly enslaved, and most of their land is taken away. It takes about 10 years, and soon the Hereros have no cattle or land to support their lifestyle anymore. The final breaking point happens in 1903 when a German only named Dietrich is walking to town to buy a new horse. As he's walking in between a vast field, the son of a high Herero chief pulls up next to him and, according to his local custom, offers him a ride. During the trip, they stop for the night and Dietrich gets really drunk. Once everybody's asleep, he tries to rape the chief's son's wife. When she refuses, he shoots her in the head. He's arrested and there's a short trial, which eventually leads to an acquittal based on temporary insanity, and he was suffering from tropical fever. His defense was he thought the camp was under attack, so he fired a shot in the dark, and what happened was just an unfortunate accident. This pisses off the local Hereros and also his fellow Germans who call him a race traitor, and they demand another trial, which eventually happens, and he gets imprisoned, and nothing else is known about him. Tensions are pretty high, and then they find out a plan by the German government to take the rest of their land, build a railway through it, and move these people to reservations, aka concentration camps. Finally, war has come. The Schutztrupps are fighting down south, and Herero launches a surprise attack that leaves 160 settlers dead. After that, half the Schutztrupps begins returning home. He doesn't want any unnecessary deaths and forbids anyone from killing an Englishman, a Boer, women and children, innocents, or any missionary. Meanwhile, Governor Theodor Gottlieb Leutwin knows that the entire wrath of Germany is about to come down on them, so he meets and begs them to stop before it's too late. The Hereros are emboldened by their victories, and they are literally destroying the Schutztrupps. To add insult to injury, they come out with a public statement calling all Germans cowards that would never face them in the open field of battle. Word gets to Emperor Wilhelm of Germany, and he sends in the professional army. And on June 11th, 1904, 14,000 German soldiers arrive with orders to exterminate any who resist. That same day, the Battle of Waterberg, or massacre, depending on what side you're on, happened. 6,000 lightly armed Herero soldiers show up with their entire families because they were told they were going to have peace negotiations. Instead, they find themselves facing Lieutenant General Lothar von Trotha with 1,500 soldiers, armed with modern rifles, 30 artillery pieces, and 14 Maxim machine guns. They surround them and massacre them by the thousands. Any survivors barely escape into the Omahiki Desert. It orders his men to give chase, and thousands of them die of dehydration. German patrols are reporting that they're finding skeletons next to holes that were 50 feet deep that where desperate men and women were trying to dig for water. Before this happened, there were 65,000 Hereros in the area, and tens of thousands of them would die from thirst, starvation, and disease. General Trotha's in it to win it, so on October 2nd, 1904, he issues an extermination order saying any Herero found within the area, armed or unarmed, will be executed on sight. And hundreds of people coming back from the desert are just killed without mercy. People in Berlin find out about this, and they're worried that their image in the global stage is being ruined, so they countermand the order. Now, any survivors are sent to a concentration camp on Shark Island, which they call Death Island. Here, 3,000 women and children died until its closure in 1908. Herero manages to get through with 1,000 men and what's left of their families into British South Africa, where they are eventually offered asylum if they agree to stop fighting. A local tribe takes in the survivors, and they become a vassal state. Back in the concentration camp, they got too many mouths to feed, so they start dividing the people into two groups, fit to work and unfit. The fit are sold off to private companies with pre-made death certificates, and those deemed unable to work are sold off for medical experimentation. In true German tradition, they keep records, and over 80,000 Hereros were reduced to 15,000 by the end. But over 100,000 deaths are estimated. It wasn't until 2004 that the German government finally recognized the genocide and apologized, and by 2017, they've given 138 million euros in monetary support to Namibia. Historians argue that Shark Island provided the template used by the Nazis for their concentration camps and during the Holocaust. If you look at it, there's a lot of similarities. The forced labor, the medical experimentation, just the genuine just not caring about human life. Today, there are over 250,000 Herero people in Namibia. So their numbers have gone up, but they've never fully recovered from this. And history repeats itself, and this was the first recorded genocide of the 1900s. From there, you have the Armenian genocide, the Holocaust, the Serbians, the Kurds, and through every single one of these, none of these were private. The whole world knew about it, but they just sat around and watched. In the words of Edmund Burke, the only thing necessary for triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. If you know something's wrong and you see it, say something, because you never know. History may repeat itself on you. Thank you for joining me. This is the Prodigal Fish, signing off.